tradition states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We will now pass the basket. This is a weekly step meeting. Our format is as follows. The speaker is asked to talk for 25 to 30 minutes on the step of that week, followed by discussion or questions until 7 p.m. You can find these weekly meetings on our YouTube page, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share. This brings us to the speaker portion of the meeting, May 2nd, 2022, in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, at the Monday night 6 p.m. Stay Alive in Literature and Step Group at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. Tonight's speaker is Nora, and she will be sharing on Step 10. Let's all give Nora a warm welcome.
Hi, I'm Nora. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Nora. My sobriety date is December 26, 2013, and my home group is the New Life group over in Sellersville. I'm so excited that I get to speak on Step 10 tonight. Originally, Teresa had asked me about Step 3, which is a great step, don't get me wrong, but Step 10, and I'll get to it, has been so transformational in my sobriety. Honestly, when I talk to sponsees and I talk to somebody who's struggling and they're in a jam, I'm like, where are you at with Step 10? You know, are you regularly taking that inventory? And I did give the forewarning, I'm going to step on Step 11's toes, because to me 10 and 11 are really intrinsically linked. And seeing the link between 10 and 11 was also very transformational in my sobriety too. Just a little quick qualification. I'm an alcoholic. I drink because I like the effect produced by alcohol. When I pick up my first drink, I generally don't know where I'm going to end up, what's going to happen, and when I'm going to stop. I tried by many means of controlling my drinking, trying to stop my drinking, trying to justify and rationalize my drinking, and it wasn't until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I got into these steps and I got into the solution that the obsession got lifted for me. The first time I did go through the steps in sobriety, 4 and 5, that's where we really first start talking about an inventory, talk about making those columns on pen and paper and seeing, the people who you were resentful at, what your part was, what it affects, getting to see some truth about yourself. And it was really imperative for me to do that with a sponsor. It was really imperative to have somebody else help me see my part in things. I thought I was really, I had those dubious luxuries, the resentments that, I thought it was my justified anger, but it would have kept me sick. It would have kept me drinking. It would have kept me out there. And when I really put pen to paper and looked back in my history, I really got to see my part in things. But the beautiful thing about seeing my part in things is the blame isn't all on another person. When I see my part in things, that also means I have part of the solution. I have part of the answer. And it comes in Step 10. It comes in 8 and 9 initially when you're starting to make those amends, but in Step 10 too, when you're making that prompt amends and you're no longer carrying that around. Because those resentments would make me spiritually sick, and as a result, I would kind of delve back into those character defects, those old ways of acting out and being, because I was still sick and blaming other people. And there's no God in that. When I'm doing that, God is not present at all. It's me on self-will, trying to run the show, trying to plan how things should be. And the other part of that for me really was fear, and seeing where fear underlies all my character defects. It's that chief activator. I love how they say it's that corroding thread that runs through all areas of our lives, because that was my life. My life was like a string with all the beads of fear, just being suffocated by this thing. And until I could get honest with another person and learn, not to hold anything back. And it wasn't about giving someone the dirt on myself. It was about seeing some truth about myself. It was about seeing, where I had been wrong and where I can grow, 6 and 7, bringing back. To me, it's like a circle. It's all intrinsically linked. You really can't have one on its own. But to get to Step 10 and what my experience with Step 10 was, I was relatively newer in the program. I had about a year. I'd been through the steps, and, I had thought I had done Step 10, if you will. I thought I had done step 10. I was like, yeah, we read it, we went over it. I've done step 10, and I was kind of waiting for those foxhole prayer moments in sobriety when things are going really, really bad and you have to call your sponsor and you know you're in trouble. Instead of doing that regular, continuing to take inventory, that regular check in with myself. Where am I at? I've gotten better with sobriety, but it did take, I was newly single in sobriety and I was like, well, I'm not drinking, so as long as I don't drink, I can kind of do whatever I want. Again, pretty divorced, not utilizing 10 and 11 the way that they're designed, not taking that regular check, not doing a nightly inventory or even doing prayer, but really lip service to prayer, not actually sitting with prayer and meditation and bringing my higher power into my life and what was going on with me. I was doing the 2-step, I'm not drinking and I think I'm helping other people. I'm going to meetings, but I'm not really living in this design. I'm not really utilizing these principles to the best of my ability. And I got my own results. Thank God I didn't drink, but I got in a pretty bad situation with a guy and it put me in a world of pain. And I remember calling my sponsor crying because I had taken my will back. I was acting in old ways. And it was then we really realized that there were a lot of things missing in my program, but one of the simplest things I could put into action at that time was a regular spot check inventory, a regular nightly inventory. Bill Wilson talks about prayer, meditation, and inventory, and when he says when they're on their own, they can be of great benefit, but when woven together, they build an unshakable foundation for life. And that is one of my favorite quotes because I've lived that. I think about, you think about 3 strands of rope and they might be powerful enough on their own, but when you weave them together and like the magnitude and strength of a 3-stranded rope, those are those 3 tools. On their own, they're great, but when you put those 3 into practice, it's transformational. The amount of strength, the amount of connection, the amount of peace that you get from it. And as a result, because I've lived it, I am such a fan of step 10 and what it does for me in my life. And it started with getting honest with another person. It started with being able to recognize, getting back with myself, getting back with my higher power, really getting grounded again, taking the time to meditate, starting to be able to see things about myself, because a lot of times when you're drinking and you're out there, you're so divorced from self. You're running to the next thing that's going to stimulate you, the next thing that's going to make you forget, the next thing that's going to just blot out consciousness. And getting into recovery, it's so immensely painful at first because you don't have the cushion of a drink, but you don't have the cushion of a spiritual solution. You're in that rock and in that hard place, like, I can't keep going on the way I was going, but I'm terrified of what's next. And the easier, softer way, even though it doesn't seem it when you walk in, is on those shades, those 12 steps. And when you've put in the work, sometimes your feet are to the fire, early on, you're like, I know I need to do this. I don't want to drink, but the complacency can set in after a few 24s. Well, I haven't drank. Life is getting better. I have my job back. People are starting to trust me again. Letting up on 10, 11, and 12, and just how much, especially in 10 and 11, and how adversely, emotional sobriety, I think that's the key to 10 and 11. Those are the greatest benefits that you get, is that peace of mind, healthier relationships with other people, freedom, emotional and spiritual freedom. So I launched on that rigorous course of action. We did look again back into 4 and 5 because, the book says, some of us needed a semi-annual house cleaning. And at that point, I most certainly did. There was a lot more trash in the pile. Looking at 6, 7, 8, and 9. But step 10 was integral for me on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to be able to stop and pause and check in. And it meant calling my sponsor a lot more. and not just calling to check in and say hi, but calling to check in and say, this is the situation. Let's look at where I was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. Let's look at what's going on there. Let's look at what's driving that. Can I bring God into this situation? Because generally when I'm forming a resentment, I'm looking on. I was at a great meeting last night, and we were talking about looking at our own side of the street, which just really feeds into this, because that's what step 10 does, and that's what sponsorship has been integral for me, is that this other person can bring God into that situation and show me what that other side of the street looks like. This is your side. This is where you're looking at your vantage point, but this is the greater scope. You didn't recognize maybe how fear was cropping in here. Maybe you didn't recognize where you were harming someone, but that vantage point is invaluable. Because I'm selfish and self-centered to the extreme. On any given day when I'm not grounded, when I'm clouded by resentment, I'm clouded by fear, I'm clouded by jealousy or anger, I can't even see past it. So to just get open and honest, and then to break it down, it's not about complaining, it's about fact-finding for the solution, and a good sponsor is going to bring you back to the solution. They're going to bring you back to, let's walk through it, let's break it down. What's being affected here? What's the fear beneath this? What's your part in things, and what is the action you should have taken? Sometimes, too, you get really lucky. You can pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right course of action. And sometimes you pick up the phone or you hit your knees before you say or you do the thing, which is definitely a gift of this program, where you can actually just stop and pause. God, show me what you'd have me do. God, help me to see this person how you see them. And that is instrumental as well. But I started to get the benefits of utilizing step 10 instantly. I've said to sponsees, I feel like it's almost cheating how much easier it makes sobriety. I liken it to brushing your teeth. If you brushed your teeth once a year, it'd be pretty disgusting. A fourth step is getting your cleaning, but step 10 is brushing your teeth twice a day. It's the good hygiene that keeps you clean, that lets you sleep at night, that doesn't get you rotting and decaying inside. And I need that. I need that regular process. And again, like I said, where for me it bleeds in is 10 and 11 when I'm doing a nightly inventory. And that is just, it amplifies my life so much when I can pause and I can go back and I can look at where I was selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid, looking at what I did right, if there's something I have to discuss with another person at once, what I could do better the next day. I like that our book talks about, the red and black, any business that's not taking in regular inventory is going to go broke. Any alcoholic who's not taking a regular inventory is going to go emotionally broke. You're going to be off balance. You're going to be weighed down by these resentments, weighed down by these fears and these shortcomings that are cropping into your life. But if you can utilize that tool of inventory and get your books balanced and ask for the help where you need it. Maybe you're helping seeing your side of something. Maybe you're helping praying sometimes for the willingness to forgive, praying for the willingness to apologize. Sometimes there are those big ones that they do take a moment, but I do find the antidote of talking to another person and really seeing truth about myself, it's humbling. And when you've gotten the results of using 8 and 9, and you know the power of making an amends, you know the freedom of not having to watch your back, not having to, worry about the wreckage of your past, but that being able to walk a free man with being at peace with your fellows, you want to promptly admit when you're wrong. You want to make things right. And when you don't, you know that you can ask for the willingness, you can ask for the strength, you can ask for the courage. I have also found that to be so transformational in sobriety, is the ability to be humbled. I think the ability to make a prompt amends sometimes when there's things, in your shortcomings, there's things in a given day where you fall short. People are sometimes amazed that you can have that wherewithal to recognize your shortcomings, to know things about yourself, to know things about, where you've fallen short, and the honesty and accountability that we don't always see outside of these rooms, but is essential for us to stay sober. I have to live an honest program. I have to live an honest life. I have to, give you the truth about myself. I can't live a double life anymore because of where it leads me back. So taking a nightly inventory is that regular cleaning of the day, and then bringing it to my higher power and asking God, maybe for the willingness to make an amends, maybe for the strength to do the next right thing, or to go into my day and to do more of what I did well today. Was I reaching out to other alcoholics? Was I trying to be of maximum service inside and outside of these rooms? Where did I fall short, and where can I do better? Step 10 is pretty magical in that way, and I've had those experiences too where sometimes you don't realize in the moment that you need to make an amends, like you're too emotionally invested in a situation, and you might have the stubbornness crop up. I've had the stubbornness crop up where I want to sit in self-righteousness. I want to sit in my resentment, and I don't want to do the next right thing, but it's short-lived. It's that dubious luxury of normal men that we can't afford, the self-righteousness, the resentment, and I know it will keep me spiritually sick. It's like eating nothing but candy for dinner. You feel pretty awful after the fact, and you're like, I just want to feel better. And I know what the solution is. I know what it was like not to utilize step 10 and to let that stuff sit, and it's such a heavy burden. Even if you don't drink, and you're just sitting in it, it's playing with fire. It's a dangerous situation, but that step gets us free. That step keeps things weightless. It keeps things fresh. I'm really grateful for the ability to make a prompt amends, and I like that word prompt is in there too. Yes, sometimes you have to pray for the willingness. If you're making an amends and there's no, it's not a genuine amends, I guess I'm sorry, it doesn't nearly have the effect of being able to see your part in things. And by the time you're working on step 10, hopefully you've had some experience with 8 and 9, and you realize that if I'm going to be going to someone and I'm going to be making an amends, I need to own my part. I can't be looking at anything on their side of the street. I have to get honest. I have to have my heart in my hands, and I have to be willing to do what I can do to make it right. And sometimes that's the ultimate test too. Am I willing to go to any lengths to be free of this? Of course, not groveling in front of anyone. We're God's people, but am I willing to earnestly do what it takes to make it right? And sometimes it means doing the uncomfortable. Sometimes it means, this is a tough one for me at work, I think. This is a tough one for me at work because work, it can tie up to your financial security. And when you really just have to get honest about your shortcomings and just being willing to do the next thing to make it right, it's so humbling but so freeing, and it's what keeps me right-sized. It's what keeps me right-sized. It's what keeps me on the beam and reminds me that I'm not cured of this thing, It's progress, not perfection, but you still strive for it. You still work towards it. And you still have, God willing, another 24 hours to do the next right thing and make it right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Nora. Please limit your sharing to 3 minutes. Please keep your shares related to the step. If you feel like drinking, or if you had a drink today, please see me or speak to someone after the meeting. We ask that you please refrain from the use of profanity. We are in a church and on a spiritual journey. Now I'd like to open up the meeting.